Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to our special edition about financial insurance, and in particular, a little bit different kind of financial insurance. We all have, well, I'd like to think everybody has insurance on their home to protect themselves in case of a fire or catastrophic event. We have insurance on our cars in case, God forbid, we get in an accident. We have insurance, hopefully, on our health in case there's a catastrophic issue with our health. But we tend not to look at our financial situation and look at it as we need to have insurance and protection for ourselves if things go south in a hurry. And as you know, on our platform on davejanda.com and Operation Freedom, we have made the case with a number of our guests that, look, the markets are not as solid as many people in the media and many people in the government would like folks to believe. And I'm honored to have with me someone who is a fan favorite of our radio show. Every time Adriana Reed comes on our show, I am inundated with phone calls and emails of folks saying, Adriana takes a very complex subject of what's happening in the financial world, and she really makes it understandable. And the other point we get about Adriana is she points us in a direction where we can sleep better at night because we feel as though we have better protection as the system unwinds. And we have been seeing some unwinding of the system internationally, significantly, domestically in the United States, whether you're looking at car sales, whether you're looking at new home sales, if you're looking at existing home sales. Some of the government data they can no longer manipulate to the point where, hey, everything's fine. Everything isn't fine. And we need to talk about your financial insurance and how to protect yourself. I'm honored to have with us today Adriana Reed. She is a principal in the Camino company. They're based in Burlingame, California. I have utilized Camino's services, Adriana's services, the members of her firm's services for many, many years. And the reason I have found Camino to be the best precious metals resource that I have had and my family has had is because of their honesty, their integrity, how they do business, and how they help so many people. It's interesting when a number of my listeners from the radio show call Camino, they'll say, I just called for some information. They never pushed me for a sale. They were happy to provide me the information and the resources of where to go to get more information so I could make a more educated decision. And this is what Camino's about. And this is what Adriana Reed is about. And this is why she is so popular on our platform. And our listeners actually requested that I do a YouTube presentation with Adriana because they want to be able to take a YouTube presentation and network it within their own families. And I thank Adriana Reed for being with us today. Adriana, welcome to the Operation Freedom platform of YouTube.
Great. Thanks for having me, Dave.
So, Adriana, I want to read you a quote from David Stockman, who my first experience with David Stockman was when he was the director of the Office of Management and Budget under Ronald Reagan. Mm-hmm. And here is something David Stockman said, and I want your reaction to it. Here's what he said, quote, "We're nearing the end. I think the world economy is plunging into an unprecedented deflation recession period of shrinkage that will bring down all the markets around the world that have been vastly overvalued as a result of this massive money printing and liquidity flow into Wall Street and other financial markets." End quote. He went on, in particular with precious metals, gold, Stockman said the following, quote, "I think it's more of an insurance policy and an option on the ultimate failure of today's form of central banking. When finally the Keynesians, who are running all the central banks, when they are totally repudiated, I think gold will soar in value." End quote. Your take, Adriana.
Dave, I think the thing that we need to realize is that we work cyclically, that the economy, it has cycles. And there's another gentleman by the name of Mr. Waves who actually describes it best, that the economy moves in waves. I think the position that we've put ourselves in recently is we've actually inflated the market much more. CNN and Bloomberg and everybody have been reporting how great the economy has been doing. And we've seen the strides that the stock market's taken. I find that in situations like that, what goes up must come down. And we've set ourselves so high up that we're going to fall incredibly hard during the next recession when it does come. I personally believe that the situation that we've set ourselves up for, we've overprinted currency.
Mm-hmm.
We've, really not put standards for the feds to really hold them accountable for what they've been doing as far as fiscally for the entire year. I've noticed, and in situations like that, when you're overprinting and we have false news reporting that inflation is low.
Mm-hmm.
These things all come to light. Darkness, there's always a light shined on situations like this. And this one coming up, I do believe is going to be the worst recession we've experienced in economic history.
Well, and I think, if you look at the statistics behind your statement, your final statement there, I believe the data support you. If we look at where we were in 2008 with derivatives, for example,
Mm-hmm.
the banking system is in far worse shape from a derivative standpoint and leverage system than they were
Yes,
in 2008.
absolutely.
So, I get criticized, Adriana, and you can criticize me all you want as well on this, but I never felt that we never even came out of that 2008, uh, whatever you want to call it, recession, depression. I believe there's been so much money printing, as you stated, that it gave us a false sense that we actually came out of it, when in fact the fundamentals of our indebtedness, which was the primary cause of the issues we had in 2008, is worse today than it was in 2008, because the underlying problem was never addressed.
I absolutely agree. I believe the economic foundation in which we're set up, it was never established, and we built upward
Mm-hmm.
on a very unstable foundation, and that's something that really sets you up for failure. And as everybody knows, with anything across the board, housing, you can take it to relationships, to economics. Foundation is key, and if you don't have that established, where you've solved the problems that are at hand,
Mm-hmm.
and you take away all of the issues, you can't have a stable economy to thrive the way that we're being told it is.
So one of the indications I always have of where to look, what
Mm-hmm.
what might go south and what actually might increase in value in financial markets, is what the big shooters, the big boys, are doing.
Yes.
And I was recently, someone who's very, very knowledgeable and very connected on the international market sent me something the other day. And I want your take on this. And in particular, he was addressing some information that was provided to him about the Rothschilds,
Mm-hmm.
if you will, almost the head of one of the head near the head of the snake of the globalist syndicate, the financial empire. They essentially
Yes.
run the federal banking systems around the world, the central banking systems. They control money printing around the world. They are so intertwined with the globalist system that it makes your head spin. Here's
Mm-hmm.
what this individual sent me. Methinks something very large comes our way very soon in the markets. And he pointed out that the Rothschild family is selling all of its trusts. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
here's what he presents. The president, Alexander de Rothschild, who recently ascended to the position, has decided to put on sale all the trust businesses that maintained and that are known as and they are known as the largest family banking system family in the world. And they put all their paper assets in their companies
Mm-hmm.
reportedly up for sale. And the conclusion of that sale, according to this individual, will occur within the first couple months of 2019. Now, lest anybody think that this is a common occurrence, I checked back with this source and said, well, is this something that they just kind of harvest every so often? And he did some research on it, got back to me and said, actually, the last time they made such a huge divestiture was right before World War One.
Mm,
And then after they sold, as World War One kicked in, they started to buy when there was blood in the streets, which is the Rothschild business model, right? Buy
that's
when
right.
there's blood in the
Yes.
streets. Now, do you think I'm overstating it say that this is a significant um, development that one of the largest families in
Hmm.
banking in the globalist syndicate is selling their paper assets?
Absolutely not. I think that this is a huge development. And the thing that about it is what you're reporting here is what the mainstream media will not report.
Mm-hmm.
And what it will do is the people that are hit with this information are going to be the 99% of people who need to develop insurance. And that's what the Rothschilds are doing is they're getting ahead of the storm that's about to come. They're preparing and they have information that many will never even have the opportunity to receive. And so, I mean, you really can't blame them for protecting themselves for knowing what's coming ahead.
Right.
And it's a great opportunity, in my opinion, with the information you have for the average household to take the opportunity and protect themselves as well.
Well, and then you look at some recent developments. Let's just look at some recent developments with our own government. They're not only 21.5 trillion in debt,
Mm-hmm.
but we have reported on our platform. Greg Hunter on USAWatchdog.com has
Yes.
reported on his platform. We've had Catherine Austin Fitts and Dr. Mark Skidmore, both Greg and myself, on a number of occasions on our platforms. No one else, you'll never see them on Fox Business News or
That's
CNBC or the
right.
like. But they pointed out that in addition to that 21.5 trillion in debt, there's another 21 trillion minimum that has been created out of the Federal Reserve's pushing buttons that have
That's right.
gone missing in our own government, just in two departments: Department of Defense and Housing
Mm-hmm.
and Urban Development. And in addition to that, it just came out that the Pentagon, that had
Mm-hmm.
ordered its first, which is hard to believe, well, maybe not so hard to believe, first real audit, it just came out that they failed that audit, not surprisingly,
Right.
that they can't find where at a minimum this 21 trillion is gone. And then you add to that, Adriana, that the accounting board has now
Mm-hmm.
changed how the government should do their accounting, that they could take 21 trillion and they can move it in a category of national security and be okay. And we
Right.
add to that the history that Rob Kirby has presented on our platform, that
Mm-hmm.
not just in the public sector they're doing that, they can actually do it in the private sector. That there's some law in the books from the early 30s, 1930s, that has shown that the president can determine if a private company is involved in some national security issues, they can have two sets of books. And what Bush 2 did in 2006 is he said, this has always been, the president can make that determination. I'm going to move this to the director of national intelligence, which
Yeah.
up until now has been controlled by the deep state. So my point being, you can't trust the finances in the government. You can't trust the finances and the accounting principles in the private sector, because any company that they deem to be in a national security related action can launder money essentially, which makes you think, because a lot of people were surprised when Enron went down. Well,
Right.
hey, guess what? Maybe that's how they hid it for so long. The point is, Adriana, this is where I think the Rothschilds and the big shooters, and if you look at sovereign entities, Russia, China, India, Hungary, have all been
Yes.
accumulating huge quantities of gold and silver.
That's correct.
I think they're reading, and tell me if I'm reading this wrong, but to me, they're reading that there's some badness coming and they need to protect themselves from a financial insurance standpoint, if you will. And this is why they've been gaining, if you will, accumulating huge amounts of precious metals.
Absolutely. I mean, it's spot on, and there's no other way to put it.
So here's one of the problems people have. They say, okay, financial, well, Russia's doing it, China's doing it, India's doing it, Hungary's doing it, all these other countries are doing it. We see Germany, Europe, Russia, China, all moving away from the dollar. This isn't a good sign either. So maybe we should do something about financial insurance. And they call their broker, okay, their stockbroker,
Mm-hmm.
who deals with paper assets. Who, by the way, most relationships stockbrokers, they get their end of the year bonus or their pay is based on how many assets they have under management.
That's right.
Okay, so many of our listeners call their broker and say, "Well, I'd like to diversify. You've always told me, Mr. Broker, Miss Broker, that it's important for me to diversify. So I want to purchase some precious metals." And,
Mm-hmm.
and and then they're told the following, Adriana. Well, you don't want to do that. You just want to stick. You know what? Facebook is down.
Yeah.
Google's down. Apple's down. You need to buy more of that,
Right.
right? So that's one problem folks have. And then if they keep pushing, and I want you to address this, the broker says, "Well, I'll tell you what. We can get you into gold and silver by buying these ETFs
Right.
they're backed by physical gold and physical silver. And one is
Mm-hmm.
called GLD and one is called SLV, and there's some other ones out there. And this is how we can diversify you." Now, what's right and what's wrong with that recommendation?
I don't think there's much right about it at all, Dave. In our personal opinion, our policy here at Camino, if you the physical possession, the physical itself is what we stand on, what we believe in, that you take possession. And one of the things that we are spot on with brokers, and the issue that we have with brokers is, they're far from used car salesmen. When things go low, they say it's time to buy, even if they believe that a crash is coming or not, for the exact reason is that their personal well-being and their personal wealth is what they're taking into consideration, and it doesn't belong to the people. Here at Camino, we don't work on commission. And part of the reason being is because the personal wealth of an individual should be their choice, and it should be in their possession. And when you buy ETFs, they're paper contracts that are backed by physicals that are unseen. And that's one of the issues that you run into, is that paper contracts can dissolve as quickly as the stock market. Physical gold and silver, it's always going to have its place in history, and it's always going to have its place during economic recession.
Adriana, speaking domestically here, one of the companies I've been very critical about, and a number of my guests have been very critical about, has been J.P. Morgan Chase. And by that I mean critical because many of us believe they have used paper assets, derivative
Mm-hmm.
positions, to suppress the price of precious metals, but in the process have accumulated huge amounts of precious metals. If we just look at one of the top precious metals analysts in the world, Ted Butler, shows that
Mm-hmm.
in May of 2011, when silver was at its high, close to $50 an ounce, if you went
Yes.
into JP Morgan's vault and looked how much physical silver they had, it was close to zero, if not zero itself. Yet today, and over the past, since May of 2011, they have utilized paper contracts to suppress the price. But if we walk into JP Morgan's vaults today, according to Ted Butler,
Mm-hmm.
they have on hand over 200 million ounces and potential exposure to over 700 million ounces of silver. So when brokers say to their clients, "You can do fine with paper gold and paper silver. That's how we'll diversify." But when
Mm-hmm.
we look at China and Russia and India and Hungary and Germany asking for their physical gold back, or J.P. Morgan Chase for that matter, they don't accumulate paper certificates. They accumulate physical gold and silver.
That's correct. And I think the other thing we need to address here, Dave, when you take physical, you also talked multiple times about what happened in Venezuela.
Hmm.
The physical itself can become a tool or a necessity if things really came down where fiat currency became dissolved, or if we had to overturn government issued currencies. And you said people have survived on the physicals.
Mm-hmm.
The families that did well survived on the physicals.
Mm-hmm.
When you buy paper contracts, if our country, it came to that, paper contracts aren't going to get you anywhere in the food line, and that's just fact.
Well, and here's the dilemma I have. China,
Mm-hmm.
communist controlled country,
Right.
encourages its citizens to buy physical precious metals, gold and silver.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, for decades here in the United States, you get the impression that our government does not want its citizenry to buy physical gold and silver.
Yeah.
So isn't it interesting that a communist-backed system encourages its citizens to protect themselves and have the financial insurance of physical precious metals, yet, and this is, I think, the fallacy that we are a free market capitalist system. I think we are nothing more than a non-free market globalist system here that unfortunately is not looking out for the welfare of its citizens when it tries to suppress the purchase of gold and silver.
Well, I think what it comes down to, Dave, is that you're taking your personal wealth into your own hands.
Mm-hmm.
And the government and the deep state have kept themselves propped up based off of the flow and circulation of money, and it's staying above board and in straight view of everybody, that they were able to manipulate you and keep spending up. Taxes were propping up, keeping us from our debt, quote, climbing up, which, is not the truth. But I think that when you buy gold and physical silver, you take your money into your own well-being and your own personal wealth, and it takes away from that circulation that the deep state needs in order to control us, is really what it comes down to.
There are two individuals in my life that clued me in, one early in life and one later in life, about the importance of precious metals to protect yourself. The first was my dad. And the reason he instilled this early in my life is because our family being able to make it through the Depression when he was a little boy was made possible of making it through the Depression because of 30 gold coins that my great-grandfather passed on to my dad's dad to get the family through financial uncertainty. And my great-grandfather knew that point and the importance of physical metals because of the Depression-like era he went through when he was still back in the Czech Republic, when gold and silver got the family through very hard economic times.
Right.
The second person later in life, who actually tails in with Camino, was Ron Paul. Ron Paul is really the only person in the political realm, and Ron Paul is a doc by trade, but he's also an economist, I believe, by trade. And Ron Paul was the first person, and yet one of the very few people in the political world in our country, who has really supported the concept of people protecting themselves with physical precious metals. And in fact, Ron Paul, I believe, was a very good friend and remains a very good friend of Camino, but also Ron Paul really learned about the precious metals arena and the importance through the founder of Camino, Bert, decades ago, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And I always remember the first conversation I had with Bert, and this was, must have been 20-some years ago. And he said to me, he goes, "So, David, why do you want to purchase precious metals?" And I told him the story of my dad and told him the story about my great-grandfather. And he said, "Do you know that less than 1% of people realize the importance of precious metals for their financial future. And I said, well, I frankly, if you do talk, and this was 20 some years ago, I said, well, actually, if I do talk about gold and silver, people kind of look at me like I'm crazy, like I'm like I have a bunker mentality. So here's my question, Adriana. When folks are around a family table, a gathering, a
Yeah.
birthday, a holiday, a celebratory event, or any kind of event, and they're talking about, well, because money can come up. Oh, my uncle. Oh, I'm making a killing on Facebook stock. Everybody should have it.
Right.
Okay, when the conversation turns to precious metals, and educate our viewers and listeners on how they should handle, because if our viewers and listeners goes, well, I'm contemplating buying some physical gold and physical silver, and when the rest of the family goes, oh, why would you do that? How should they respond? Because you're a pro at this. You've been through this so many times.
My thing is what you said at the very beginning. We buy insurance on almost every aspect of our life. And I would tell my relatives that I'm buying insurance for the next recession. And, I think that, like I said, I would explain that it's cyclical. The economy goes up, the economy goes down. And you spoke one time, speaking of your father, about back in 2000, when he gave you some information about the .com bust coming. And when you see volatility, you have to respond. And so my response to everybody would be that, we're in the midst of volatility, and preparing for your future could be the difference between your 401k staying or your 401k going.
Now, many people that make the decision, Adriana, about buying precious metals get ripped off. No one that's dealt with Camino, but I can tell you a lot of people go other places and they get ripped off. So let's educate people so they don't get ripped off. Okay. So, for example, let's deal with there are certain folks that say, well, I called this other company, not Camino, and they said, well, I should buy these numismatic coins that have they're a lot more expensive. I mean, they're like 2 or 3 times the cost of an ounce, what an ounce should be, but I'll make it up because of the rarity value. When folks start getting involved in buying precious metals, is that a good move, or should they try to get the most number of ounces of gold and silver with their purchase?
Dave, in honesty, I think the best thing, whenever we have a novice buyer, we start with bullion, straight ounces, keeping premiums low, and getting to that point. Once you have a good, solid foundation of your precious metals portfolio, then diversification can come, where there are opportunities in realms of semi-numismatic coins. But we always let's start at the base and get that good foundation set up.
One of the other issues that gets brought up when folks say, and again, not with Camino, well, I called this company about some information, non-Camino, and well, they kept calling me like 24/7. Now, to me, if there's a company doing that, that's a company I don't want to do business with. You don't do cold calls. You don't do that callback type of interaction, do you?
No, we do not.
Now let's talk about purchasing, because many people say, well, I know how to buy a stock, I know how to buy a bond, I know how to put money in my bank account, but I don't know how to purchase precious metals. So let's take it the way, and I'm not going to talk, I don't want to talk about all the rip-off artists and what they do. I want to talk about what you do, because you folks do it straight up, make it easy, make it simple, make it confidential. So someone calls you that has never purchased precious metals before and says, Adriana, I'd like to buy I want to diversify, I want some financial insurance, I want to buy some gold and some silver, and I have X number of dollars to spend. Okay.
Yes.
How do we, what do we do? Take us through this.
So the conversation you'll have with any of the traders, it will be the same across the board. Um, we'll walk you through what's best based off of the amount that you're looking to spend. Um, there's different items that will always be best for different individuals when it comes to bullion. And we basically create a private profile that works best for you and what you're looking to spend based off of many people say I'm going to buy every month, and then we start a regimen. Then we also have the people who call in every 6 months when they feel comfortable and have saved up enough. So what we do is we really set it up so that it works for you, and we go over through all of the different commissions that are on each individual coin itself, and then we allow for you to make the decision based off of what you also think is best for yourself.
Now, when somebody buys, let's start with gold. Somebody buys gold. You can buy
Yeah.
bars. You can buy coins, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, what do you recommend? I mean, bars are pretty pricey. I mean, and when gold is 1,300 an ounce or whatever it is, that gets pretty pricey. So, do you recommend the coins?
We always recommend the coins. We find in America alone, the American Gold Eagle, the Canadian Maple Leaf, the reason we recommend those is being that they have the lowest premium, so you're buying straight gold at that point, but also the return on the other side, if it does come time for you to sell, the margins are small. So you're looking at 1% to 2% in between, and that way you have the most benefit from your purchase as well.
Okay, and then let's go to silver. In
Uh-huh.
silver, you can buy bars. You can
Mm-hmm.
buy coins, silver eagles, for example. You can buy rounds, which are 1 inch. They look like a silver eagle, but they're not put out by the U.S. Treasury, and
Yes.
it's a generic round. Uh,
Uh-huh.
what should folks do?
So we always recommend closest to silver spot price, of
Mhm.
course. That's why the rounds are a great opportunity. We also do find a lot of people do lean towards the silver eagle because the difference between the round and the silver eagle is the silver eagle has a dollar value marked on it.
Mhm.
So some people like to have that just in case of an emergency.
Now, the other one I didn't mention, people, you
Uh-huh.
hear the term junk silver, and people
Right.
go, why do I want to buy junk? I don't want to buy junk. It's not
Mhm.
junk. What is junk silver?
So junk silver is in reference to 90% silver coins that are dated pre 1965. So 64 and before, half dollars, quarters, and dimes were all made with 90% silver in them. With the price of silver being what it is, they've increased in value heavily. We call it junk silver because it's been circulated. So if you're looking for a shiny, nice new piece of silver, it's not going to reference that. It has been touched, it's circulated. Many people actually still find it in their change. So if you
Mhm.
see some quarters and one looks a little slightly different based off the rim or the toning or the color of it, there is potential that it is silver, but that's where it comes from.
So when folks determine, okay, I'm going to buy so much gold, so much silver, tell
Mm-hmm.
us how, so then what happens from your end?
So then what we do is we would lock in all of the prices. We go based off of verbal contract. So when we give you the contract number, in essence, we say that the coins are yours and you're just guaranteeing payment. So everything would be laid aside for you. Um, we just expect payment to be postmarked because many of our clients are not local to us. Postmarked within 48 hours is the requirement for the payment. When we receive your check, your money order, which we treat exactly all paper checks in any form are all treated the same. We wait 5 business days and then we ship on the fifth business day.
Now, so okay, so there are some folks that have dealt with other companies, and
Mm-hmm.
they've told me, well, they quoted me. I'm just going to give you a figure right now. They quoted me $1,300 an ounce for an ounce of gold, but the price of gold went up to $1,400 an ounce uh, by the time my payment arrived. So they sent me another bill for the
Mm-hmm.
difference of the price. Do you do that?
No, absolutely not. The numbers and figures that are spoken, and as long as you have that contract number that the trader would give you over the phone, all prices are locked in whether the market goes up or down.
Okay, so then you send out the product. Okay,
Yes.
now here's one of the concerns. Folks say, well, I'm afraid everybody in the neighborhood and the post office and everybody that's touched it in the post office across the
Mm-hmm.
country is going to know that I have gold and silver because it's going to say on there, here's your gold and silver. Is that
Mm-hmm.
true?
No.
Oh.
We keep the our boxes completely quiet. You know, there's no dinging of coins on the inside, so there's no representation of what's on the inside. And on top of that, we also are called the Camino Coin Company, but all of our labels we've took out coins, so we're just posted as the Camino Company in order to keep some more anonymity in that way as well.
So then folks get it. Okay, now
Uh-huh.
here's the next big question because so folks say, okay, well I have this now. I have these nice. Wow, these are really nice. These gold coins, these silver coins.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, okay, now I gotta find a place to keep them. All right. So
Mm-hmm.
people go, they say, well, I know the safest spot is a safety deposit box. I'm gonna run to the bank and put them in there. Is that a good move?
No, it's not.
Why?
Because the safety deposit box is still owned by the bank. So they do have a right to open it, to seize it based off of their own expectation.
Well, actually, and J.P. Morgan Chase, a number of people sent me their communication several years ago, said um, you're not allowed to keep
That's right.
gold and silver. If not, and if we find it, well, essentially bad luck.
Yes.
Okay, so if folks don't put it in a safe deposit box,
Mm-hmm.
what are their options?
So one of the main options that you offer with your show is, and you talk about, is Brinks.
Yeah.
Brinks is a private facility. It's a great opportunity to store stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of the
And we
main
have no affiliation with Brinks, by the way. I mean, other than thinking it's
yeah.
a great company, right? Okay, go ahead.
Right. Yes. One of the main things, though, that I get with Brinks is that people find that the location's not close enough
Right.
to them,
Right.
which can be difficult for them. So I have two recommendations. I have done a lot of research for individuals to go check out private
Mm-hmm.
facilities that have opened up in their area. It's becoming much more common
Mm-hmm.
and is a great opportunity to store things. And I always just make sure you're going to a reputable source if you are going to store your material there. The second option, and it does discourage people to have it, but keeping it in your home in a fireproof safe. We do have a lot of clients that we have dealt with fires. So we do recommend a fireproof safe is something that I really would like to emphasize, especially here in California with what we've experienced recently.
Mm-hmm.
And hiding it and keeping it put away where it's unseen, out of sight, out of mind.
A couple of my friends are aware of some people who actually find a way. They have a large amount of property. They're not kind of in the city like we are here, but and they actually bury some of the product that they buy.
Absolutely.
Now you got to be careful with that. I mean, you just can't take a box and plop it in the ground, right?
Right. Yeah.
You have to have some protection around it, right?
It's always preferable, but Dave, you'd be surprised how many people have been just fine with plopping it in the ground.
So on the flip side of this, Adriana, so now folks have their financial insurance and all heck is breaking loose. And prices of gold and silver are skyrocketing and they go, hey, whoa, this turned out good, but I need to be able to go, I need to have, I'm not sure why, well, I need to have some cash. Although if gold and silver are skyrocketing, cash is obviously depreciating. But let's say they want to trade it in, okay? If they want to, how difficult is that? Because many people say, many brokers, stockbrokers will say, oh, you'll never be able to sell this.
We buy back everything that we sell.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, we buy back material you may have bought from another company. I'd like to add, you don't have to just have had purchased from us in order to sell back to us. So any conversion, it's just the same process, only in reverse. You would send the material to us. We get counts. We make sure everything is as stated. And then we would send you payment.
And also, several of our listeners have relatives in Venezuela. You brought up Venezuela early in the interview. And what they said was that an ounce of silver in Venezuela will buy a family of four close to a month's worth of groceries.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not trying to trade it in for cash. They're traded. They actually are purchasing items, and this is what happens when supply chains break down. They're actually
Yes.
purchasing items, foodstuffs, protection for their overall well-being with the silver that they had purchased prior.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Adriana, you've been at this a long time.
Uh-huh.
What's the biggest mistake people make?
This is one of the main things you brought up with the Rothschilds, is be ahead of the curve. We tell people all the time, get ahead of the storm. The opportunity to buy, in my personal opinion, and based off of knowledge that you've given, many sources have given, that there is a financial crisis ahead of us. And when it comes, it's going to hit hard. And accessibility to the material becomes limited. The price becomes out of many people's range.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of money is also lost in individual households during recessions. And it allows them not to be able to come back. So stay ahead. Give yourself the opportunity.
When I look back a number of years, that back 2008 time period,
Mm-hmm.
when the price started to really move up and the
Yes.
markets were cracking,
Uh-huh.
supply became tight.
It did, yes.
And premiums did go up. But I have to say, when a lot of companies that I was hearing about had no supply, Camino did have supply
Mm-hmm.
for purchases. Many people believe that that was a one-off event and that we're not going to have problems like that where supply is going to be so constrained. I don't agree with that, but what's your take? You're the pro on the front line every day with this.
I think after 2008, many people have accumulated themselves and prepared for the next go around. I think it could actually be worse than it was in 2008 as far as accessibility and also price increase. So I'm with you. I 100% disagree that, that it's not an issue.
Adriana, how do folks get in touch with you? I know you do have a website, CaminoCompany.com, but I know you're always open for you or any of the traders at Camino to speak with folks, help educate folks. How can they get in touch with you?
So you can give us a call at 800-348-8001. On our website also, we have a contact link. We actually work 7 days a week on the contact link. If it's something we can answer while we're out of the office, we will take the opportunity to answer. If not, we'll tell you to give us a call back during live hours from 9 to 5. Also to let people know we are in California, so if you call before 9 o'clock Pacific time and we don't answer, it's not that we're not open.
But they can always go through the contact page on CaminoCompany.com, CAMINO, CaminoCompany.com. Adriana, I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to thank your entire team for everything that you have done, are doing, and will do. I must say that of all the interactions I've had with folks in the precious metals world, it's always a pleasure speaking to you, speaking to everyone at Camino and your team. I am every week I've been contacted by folks that are our listeners, thanking me, which is actually kind of rare, I think, thanking me for discussing this issue, presenting this information, for having you come forward and to be there, as, if you will, a resource that folks can trust and that they can
Mm-hmm.
count on. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for getting all the information out.
And as we close every segment, it's Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. I do suggest you go to CaminoCompany.com. As I said, they are the best folks that I've ever come in contact with in the precious metals arena, and they're also the most honest. They'll do right by you. They'll give you your financial protection so that you can sleep better at night. I know I do since I have been working with, knowing the folks at Camino for well over 20 years. Until next time, this is Dave Janda signing off. Thanks for your time today.